Well, hi everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge, and I'm going to have to stop us just for a second here. We're live, and got an error that I've never seen before. There it is. We were getting a not recording error, and now all of a sudden it's gone, so here we are. It's Stratosphere Lounge episode 34 or 35. Honestly, I'm just going to have to check. I just don't know. It's funny how these things get away from you. 34, 35 of these things, and we miss a bunch, you know. It seems like every fourth or fifth one, something happens where I have to be out of town. Take these lights down just a little bit. That's a little better. So welcome back. It's good to have you here, and it's good to be here, certainly. Tonight, of course, is our famous, strenuous, daring, three-word questions only. So we already have some great questions, and I didn't take quite so many this time, so I can actually get through all of them. And I guess we'll get started in just a minute. But the three-word question thing is kind of fun. The two-word question thing is going to be awesome. Then we're going to do, as I said before, we're going to do a haiku question only. And then we'll do the one-word questions, which will be a word and a question mark. Interesting. So I hope everybody's doing really well out there. And I guess it's time to kick it off. I think the first one I saw that I just wanted to mention was somebody said, we can call everybody in this room Stratosphere Loungers. I think that's an awesome name. Stratosphere Loungers are what we'll be. I'm going to be calling myself anyway. So we can start with that. So the first question of the day, previewed already in the comments section, is, and this is important. Keith Alleman wants to know, why not Zoidberg? Why not, indeed? Why not Zoidberg? Ladies and gentlemen, I think that's the question that everybody wants an answer to. Why not Zoidberg? You know, John Zoidberg is the chief medical director at Planet Express, and he's had kind of a hard life. He's a visitor here. He's an immigrant like the rest of us. And many times there's been opportunities for success and advancement, and he's always been passed over. So why not Zoidberg? That's the question. Who can fix this economy? Why not Zoidberg? Who perhaps would be a better president of the United States than the current occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? Well, I say again, why not Zoidberg? Why not Zoidberg? For those of you who are not getting this reference, I pity you. I do. I pity you from the bottom of my heart. Because you are, I am asking the brave questions here on the Stratosphere Lounge. There's nothing we won't look at straight in the eye. And the issue of why not Zoidberg is something that, Strato Loungers is what I meant to say, Viper Check. I didn't mean to say Stratosphere Lounge. Strato Loungers, that's what I meant. I blew it. So yes, why not Zoidberg? Why not? We ask the tough questions here. So if Zoidberg can be the chief medical officer of Planet Express, then anybody can be president of the United States. You'll have to untangle the logic behind that. However, let me just say this for those of you who don't get the reference. It's from Futurama, which was a show that ran several years ago on Fox. They didn't know what to do with it. It was the Matt Groening show, same producer of The Simpsons. That's why it looks like The Simpsons. And I think it ran 3 seasons, something like that, 2-3 seasons. And then it went away for a while, and then Comedy Central resurrected it. And I've always liked the show, but I have a special connection to it because I have a special connection to it because I've got to be pretty good friends with Maurice LaMarche, who's a voiceover actor, and Maurice is gotten to be a good friend of mine. He's a terrific guy. Maurice LaMarche is the voice of the Brain on Pinky and the Brain. Yes, Pinky. He did the voice of Orson Welles on Ed Wood. He also on Futurama, he does Kiff. Yes, sir. He does Morbo, the newscaster. Windmills do not work that way. And he does Lure and a couple of others. And he's just a terrific guy. He's just a big bear of a guy, nice guy. Invited me to a Futurama table read, which was a heck of a kick. Sitting there around a table, being very quiet, but watching voice talent like Billy West and Maurice LaMarche work. And that particular script was one of the best of the new redos. It was absolutely, I think, the best of the new cycle. That was the one where they keep going forward through time and the world keeps changing and they keep trying to decide when to get off, and it was hilarious. So that's always a privilege to watch great actors and great talent working. And so I had a great time doing that. So I was very pleased to ask Why not, Zoidberg? Why not indeed? Some questions answer themselves. I'm feeling a little raspy tonight, a little dry. I don't think there's anything wrong with me. Just for some reason or another, my voice hasn't woken up today. Yes, Zoidberg. So moving on, Indiana Finney wants to know, what is liberty? That's a great question, isn't it? I mean, it's one of these things where we just say, we're doing this for liberty, and we're all about freedom, we're all about freedom, and we're all about liberty. And I think this is an important question because when you've had this much liberty this long, you assume it's kind of the default condition of the world. Nobody can imagine a world without freedom. Nobody can imagine what it would be like to not be able to do what you want to do pretty much all the time. And that's why guys like us, conservatives in general and historians in particular, even amateur historians like myself, are very, very worried about what we see, because liberty is not the default condition of mankind. Liberty is a little bubble that's maintained and protected by the blood of brave men and women who fight and die for it, fought and died for it to get us here, and continue to do so today. And when it's taken for granted to the degree that it's taken for granted, then people assume that it's just the way it is, but it's not. And all you have to do is look outside the boundaries of this country and Western Europe, which is the birthplace of this idea of liberty. It's a Western idea. It never existed before. Now think about that. That's another thing we take for granted. Well, there were always people, freedom fighters, but no, there weren't. You'd get a guy like Spartacus, who was a slave, leading a slave uprising, but this idea of individual freedom, unheard of, was invented in the Enlightenment, in the Age of Reason. So my big concern about what freedom is that since it is so rare and so precious and so hard to maintain, if we start taking it for granted, and we certainly are doing that, then we won't be willing or even able to defend it. And so we have to start asking ourselves, what does this erosion of liberty lead to? Well, it leads back to what is actually the default state of mankind, which is rule, tyranny, people telling you what to do. It's always been that way, It's always been somebody telling somebody else what to do. And clan chiefs and tribal chiefs, and there's been kings and emperors and czars and, the big honcho, the head man, the big man, the top man, the head cheese. And this idea that we can take care of ourselves, pretty new idea. The Greeks messed around with it a little bit, and the Spartans had some ideas about it. Really, it's the Scots and the Brits and very independent, kind of cantankerous and ornery people who wanted to be left alone and were ready to fight over it. It really kind of gave us this idea. So the thing about liberty is it doesn't just go away. It's not like a light switch. This is why people say, do you think Barack Obama's going to steal a third term? He's basically just not leave. No, of course he'll leave. Because if he did that, if he were to stay in office for a third term, that would activate the American tyranny response, which is still there. It's weakened quite a bit, but it's still there. If he basically just said, no, I'm going to run again, or no, I'm not leaving, then there'd be tanks in the streets and people with rifles. They're not that stupid. They don't have to have him stay in office. All they have to do is keep the philosophy in office, keep the ideas in office and the policies in office. And so what they do is they have been working, I think, on this quite hard, and every day that goes by it gets clearer and clearer to me. What they're doing, I think, is they are eroding not only our trust in, but our belief in the idea of law. They flaunt the law. They lie all the time. Take Weiner, for example. Here's a guy who's was thrown out in disgrace. Now he's running for mayor. And what do we do about it? Has the public, has the citizenry just risen up and said, you're a known liar and a known charlatan and a known pervert. You disgrace the office by running for it. No, they well, whatever. Okay, he made his apology on Oprah or whatever. So what happens is, as they begin to destroy our belief in law, as they begin to lie about things like Benghazi and things like Fast and Furious and of course the Zimmerman thing, as they continue to do these things and erode the belief in the law, because they can, then we start to lose belief in the law. And when we lose our belief in the law, liberty's on its way, because the entire idea of liberty is that if you have virtuous people who are doing the right thing more or less most of the time, you need very few laws, but those laws have to be adhered to. That's a civil society. And when belief in the rule of law goes, then liberty will go. Because if people think that the laws are only for the people who aren't connected, then obeying the law makes you a chump. It's like people who wait in line trying to get off a freeway ramp. That's the smart way to go. It's the fastest way to get everybody off the ramp. And you can afford to have one or two people cut in line. It's still the smart way to get out of there. But when everybody is cutting the line at the last minute, when every single other car, except for you and two or three other schmucks, is cutting in front of you, then doing the right thing makes you a chump. And the entire society flips. It flips from being a lawful society to being a corrupt society. It becomes a get-what-you-can-now society. It becomes redistribute the pie rather than grow a bigger pie society. It does all those things. So what is liberty is really what we take so much for granted. It's the ability to do what you want, say what you want, and go where you want without limits, as long as you don't harm someone else or their property in the process. It's just that simple. It's just really that simple. And this is in great danger. And one of the things I've been talking about recently is, the Fourth Amendment unreasonable search and seizure. I hadn't really been aware of it. It's so subtle and it's so reasonable in many cases. So many of these things that they do to erode our liberties are reasonable, and they're sold to us in a reasonable way. I think probably the best example of these kind of thing would be these sobriety checkpoints. We have them all over the place in LA. On Saturday nights, often you'll just be driving down Van Nuys Boulevard or Ventura Boulevard, and up ahead you'll see a bunch of lights, and you'll be pulled over. You will be waved to the curb or in line, and a police officer will come up to your window, nice enough, and he'll say, "Good evening, sir. Just conducting a field sobriety check. Have you been drinking tonight?" "No, officer, I haven't." He can tell from your speech that you're not slurring or your eyes and so on. Says, "Have a good night." Off you go. So what's to worry about? Excuse me. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that you have just acquiesced to an erosion of your liberties. You haven't kicked the castle down. There's still a castle, but a wave has broken over it, and it's softened the boundaries. And another wave will break over it, and it'll soften it some more. And if you continue to let these waves break over the sandcastle, pretty soon it's just a lump, and then pretty soon the lump is gone. So it's very slow. But the fact of the matter is, if a policeman, if you are signaled over to the side of the road as part of a line of traffic, I think you have an obligation as a citizen. When they roll down the window and they say, "Have you been drinking?" I think you have an obligation to say, "Sir, do you have probable cause to believe that I've been drinking? Because if you do, please tell me what I'm charged with, and if you don't, I'd like to go about my business. You have no business detaining me. You have no probable cause to think that I was drinking. So am I being detained?" Now, a lot of these guys really, really, really get upset about this. And this is a great disgrace. I'm a big supporter of law enforcement in general terms. But when policemen are called on this and they start to get not only aggravated and agitated, but violent, then you know that officer doesn't understand his job. He doesn't understand the oath he took. You have a perfect right to say, "Am I being detained? And do you have probable cause to believe I was drinking before you pulled me over? You don't get to smell alcohol on my breath. Now, did you have probable cause to pull me over before? No. You're just another car going down the road. They have no business doing it. And by allowing them to do it, they set the standard. It raises the bar of what's allowable. And we see this kind of raising of this bar of what's allowable from Eric Holder pretty much every day. We're going to have drones flying over American cities. Really? Yep. What are you going to do about it? Nothing, apparently. We're going to put a filmmaker in prison because we claimed that he caused this uprising in Benghazi. He didn't. But, and this is the important point, that is 100% irrelevant. It doesn't matter whether he did cause the uprising in Benghazi, because now you are facing which is more important, our fundamental constitutional right, the First Amendment, the most important one, the ability to say and think what you want, or is it more important to have peace and security in the Middle East and not offend Muslims? The president has already weighed in on this, by the way. He said the future does not belong to those who insult the Prophet of Islam. I have a right to insult the Prophet of Islam. Muhammad is a schmuck. And I could go further than that. But he's a schmuck. He's a pedophile and a schmuck. I don't think too much of Jesus or Buddha or any of these other guys, Moses. They're all a bunch of schmucks, let's say. And so is, what's Mr. Atheist? Him too. They're all schmucks. Screw them all. See, that's my First Amendment right. I have the right to do that. But The president doesn't think so. The president thinks that if that causes unrest in the Middle East, then I don't have the right to do that. That's why these people have to be stopped. They are anti-freedom. They are anti-liberty. In the best case scenario, they think that they're taking your liberties for your own good. It's still tyranny, and it's still fascism, and it's still control freakism. But I don't think these people even think they're doing it for our own good anymore. I think the people who are doing this are the people that just want power. That's all there is to it. They just want power, and they're finding out how much they can take. Amendment X over there in the comment section, which you don't see on YouTube, but you do get to see when you watch the show live on Ustream. You get to comment on it. Amendment X over there said there's a reason the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment. Precisely. The Second Amendment is all there is to protect the other amendments. It's force. And if we didn't have a Second Amendment, this experiment would have been over a long, long, long time ago. So anyway, that's, I think, the answer I can give you for what is liberty. It's precious, it's rare, it's unusual, it's historically anomalous, and we'd better be aware of it, and we'd better protect it, because you don't even have to go back in time. All you have to do is step outside the borders of this country. Anybody who's ever been to the third world knows that even Thailand, which I thought was a very laid-back, very relaxed people, very kind people, very warm. I never got a sense of violence or crime in Thailand at all. I did from the Russians who were there. The Russians are all over that place in Pattaya. The Russians were drunk all the time. Every Russian I saw was drunk, and they were mean. But when you get to a place like Thailand, you can't say anything about the king. If you say anything about the king, you'd be put in prison. I just saw a comment here from Matt Sylvie, who says that when I got my California driver's license, I agreed to cooperate with DUI checkpoints. See? There you go. You can argue that driving is a privilege. It's not a right. I was unaware of that, to be honest with you, Matt. So change the driver's license requirements. They're unconstitutional. It's an unconstitutional agreement, and it's unreasonable. It's unreasonable. You have look, just so there's crystal clear understanding about this, I'm not saying that the policemen don't have a right to pull you over for drunk driving. They not only have a right, they have an obligation. That is part of the job of government, is to protect the rest of our people from people who are going to hurt other people and acting irresponsibly to the point where they want to drive drunk on their own ranch and drive off a cliff in their own car. I don't care. It's none of my business. But if you're driving drunk down a residential neighborhood at 70 miles an hour in school zone, yes, we have a right to protect ourselves against that. So I don't have any problem with them pulling over a person who's weaving down the road. However, if I sign an agreement to do that, that's my own fault for not having read it. I have no memory of it, and it needs to be changed. And this is the kind of pushback that would be necessary. Little things like this, and make the case. This finally, I know I've been going on about this for a long time, but this is finally the other thing too. You try to get that out of the California driver's license agreement when you sign for it. If you try to get, oh, no, I no longer agree to, we're going to remove that from the California driver's manual or whatever. People have a cow and they wonder why, and they say, what, are you in favor of drunk driving? You say, no, I'm in favor of liberty. I'm in favor of the presumption of innocence. I'm in favor of being allowed to go where I want to go without being harassed by law or government unless they have a reason to suspect me. That's reasonable. And you can sell that to people too. You can sell it to them, but it takes effort. By the way, go Gators. Okay, anyway, let's move on. Jared Brown wants to know property in space, ? Jared knows I'm a big space guy and fascinated by the whole idea of private space. I don't actually have enough of a factual grounding to answer this as well as I should. A person who I think knows quite a lot about it is the blog father, Glenn Reynolds at Instapundit, who, I say this every show virtually, I wouldn't be here without Glenn Reynolds. He linked everything I ever did. I just wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be having this conversation if it weren't for Glenn Reynolds. So he's quite a lawyer and very much interested in space and is up on space law. But my understanding is that the Outer Space Treaty bans the owning of private property in space. I have two responses to that. First of all, it shouldn't. Private property is the entire idea of private property is the only reason anything happens. If people went exploring for gold or oil or anything else on this earth, and they were told that once you find it, it won't be yours anymore, there would be no oil or gold or mining. There'd be no manufacturing. There'd be no agriculture. If people said, yeah, grow the crops, but at any given time we can just come in and take them, there wouldn't be any agriculture. There'd be nothing. There'd be no civilization. All of civilization is fundamentally based on private property. I'm going to work for this result. This result will be mine. I will then sell it at the best price I can get, and I will profit from this venture. And that goes all the way down to feeding anyone more than your family, right? That transaction is everywhere. And so you need property and space to develop space. And if you don't have property and space, then you're in trouble. You're going to spend billions of dollars, tens, hundreds of billions of dollars to launch an outer space enterprise, and then it turns out you don't own the property. In other words, we go out and mine an asteroid, let's say, and I recover 7 tons of platinum, and I don't get to own the platinum because there's no private property in space? Nonsense. Nonsense. You've just got to change that law. You've just got to either back the country out of that treaty because it's an international treaty, or you could keep what other parts of the treaty that may be worthwhile, and I don't think any of it's worthwhile, frankly. I do not like that law. But you have to have property in space. Now, a lot of people get really lathered about this idea. And I wrote a line in Aurora, which has subsequently been excised because I wrote about 300 or 400 pages of the first draft of that script, trying to get all this stuff down out of my head. Basically, I said, there are people out there who will go out and protest in the streets if they found out that a company was trying to develop water rights on a comet. They'd be out in the streets protesting, fists in the air, ready to go to jail to stop these evil corporations from owning a comet. And these are the people who don't know what a comet is, have no idea where to find a comet, are unaware of the fact that there are billions of comets in the solar system. They literally don't know what they are, where they are, or how to get there. They've never seen one. They have no interest in it at all. But the idea that somebody would own something will cause them to get out in the streets and protest it. What do you say about that? How far lost are you? You're a pretty far gone society when people take so much for granted. They'll tweet about it on their iPhones too, as they're having their Starbucks. About how evil it is with private property and corporate ownership. So you got to get it back, Jared. You have to have property rights and space. You have to own things. You have to be able to develop things. You have to be able to bring things back and sell them. So I think we need to. Fix that. Honking says you're allowed to own samples. Samples are samples. Then you get into the definition of sample. I want ore. I want resources. I want large quantities of stuff. And I want the property too. So people would then say, well, geez, does that mean you have a right to own the moon? If somebody's got the right to own the moon, I know who that somebody is. And ultimately what it comes down to, and I think this is still in Aurora, when they land on a comet in Aurora, they put up a real estate sign that says for sale. And ultimately, really what it comes down to is who's going to enforce this law? In other words, if we're actually up there developing this stuff and bringing it back and selling it, and I claim this part of this comet or the whole comet, who's going to come up and evict me from my property? The only people who would be able to evict you would be other people with spacefaring capability. You would think those people would see a need for private property too. It may come to the point where people out in space just say, these are Earth laws. Nobody gives a damn about what they say down there. We'll trade you 50 pieces of iron ore for 200 gallons of refined drinking water, and you deal with it your own way. So I don't think that this idea of this kind of outer space treaty, to me, I think someday will be like the papal bull against the comet, right? Where the Pope basically says the comet which is going to come, comets are terrible omens, is forbidden. I forbid it. I forbid the comet from coming. Forbid all you want to, regulate all you want to, come up and enforce it. Molin lobby, as far as our comet is concerned. So moving on, Joshua Schweitzer says, Alex Jones, villain? I'm glad I got that question because I've never talked about Alex Jones, and I think this applies not only to Alex Jones but to other people like him. And I don't know, may lose some friends over this, but that's okay. I don't consider Alex Jones to be a villain, but he's certainly. I almost said, but he's certainly not an asset, but that's not true either. The problem with Alex Jones and with people like Alex Jones, in my opinion, Alex Jones is a guy I think who runs InfoWars, and he's a big conspiracy guy. Everything's a conspiracy, and the government's involved with everything, and he's pretty far out there. The problem with this whole kind of attitude, to me, since it's my opinion, is that there's enough genuine evil assaults on freedom and liberty going on out there so that you shouldn't have to invent stuff. And frankly, if you can't prove that it's true, you need to have the same kind of critical internal faculties that say, if I can't prove it's true, then I can't prove it's true. I'm going to move on to something else that I absolutely can prove is true. There's so much that they're doing that is provable that you don't have to go off into these weeds. And so I think I think guys like Alex Jones hurt the cause in many ways because when they start going off into the, I'll just say, in my opinion, just the nutty stuff, it discredits all of the not nutty stuff. And Alex Jones actually does a fair amount of really good work about stuff that's not nutty. The problem is now he's gone so far into the weeds that InfoWars and his website and Alex Jones himself is not credible. And I try to maintain credibility in the sense that I'm not going to go to bat over something unless I've seen some evidence. And if I'm wrong, and I'm not often wrong, but I'm occasionally wrong, I'll make a correction because credibility is important to me. So if you don't have that sort of internal sense of discipline and concern, you actually genuinely have to want to be right and not just spitball everything and throw everything you hear. Sometimes I'll get emails about Obama said this and Obama said that. I'll just look at it instantly and say, obviously, that's just not true. It's just not possible that he said that. He may be thinking it, but he didn't say that. And people run with it, and you look silly. And unfortunately, the way the left works is if you have a 20-page indictment of something like Fast and Furious, 20 pages of facts, sourced, documented, everything. If you make a spelling error, they will say, I can't even spell separately. Why should we believe him? Lunatics. And Alex Jones is contributing to this. He's contributing to this sense that that it's nuts. I think, of course, the big issue in the middle of all this is the birth certificate issue. They have managed to demonize the birth certificate issue as a form of insanity. I'm not at all convinced that birth certificate is authentic. The reason I don't talk about the birth certificate is because it is now irrelevant until there is absolute hard evidence. And I know that there's evidence, and I know that Sheriff Joe has got evidence, but the fact is he's swimming against this media stream. Now, maybe it is. Maybe it is authentic. Maybe he was born in Hawaii. I just don't know. I doubt it, but I don't know. But see, this is the kind of thing where I would never come out and say that he was not born in Hawaii because I don't have at my disposal evidence that he was not. Evidence of tampering is evidence of tampering, but it's not evidence that he was not. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So that's not an issue I'm going to go to bat for because my credibility is more important than that one issue. Some people disagree with this. Some people say it's the entire thing. It's the whole ball of wax, which is swell. And history may record that that is true. Nothing would make me happier. Nothing would make me happier than to have the compelling evidence that this guy is in fact not a U.S. citizen and that the whole thing was a fraud. I think there's a non-trivial chance that that's the case. And then what happens? In my opinion, every single law he signed is void. And you want to talk about treason and fraud and jail for the rest of your life. It's the greatest fraud in history. If he pulled it off, I don't know. And since I don't know, I have to assume that the story is true, even though there's a lot around there that's dicey. It's not a question of me going on the limb. It's not a question of me not having the courage to do it. I have the wisdom to say, I don't have the evidence to prove this. And the burden of proof, this is an interesting point. Where is the burden of proof? I almost said the burden of proof is on me, but it's actually not. The burden of proof is actually on Obama. Obama has the burden of proof to prove to the American people that he is legitimate, that he is authorized, that he's, he meets the standards as outlined in the Constitution. And I don't think he lived up to those standards. And I think the press utterly covered it up, but it's behind us. There's nothing I can do about that right now. So that's the Alex Jones thing. He does some really good work, and there's some important information there, but you got to figure out, well, what's real and what's not. And even if you find what's real on InfoWars with Alex Jones, you can't source it. It's not a source because he's destroyed his own credibility. And that's all there is to it. So just because he's, and this is the final thing. See, I don't want to make this sound like I'm completely against the guy because even though he doesn't have any credibility, doesn't mean he's wrong. A lot of these charges that he brings may in fact be true. And his evidence may in fact be real evidence, but it doesn't matter because his credibility is repeatedly shot. And I don't want to get into those waters at all. All right, moving on. Patty Fleischel wants to know, how's your cholesterol? It's excellent, Patty. Thanks for asking. It was a little high. Triglycerides were a little high. Cut the bread out. Got on the vitamin E, and now it's low normal. My bad cholesterol's always been low normal. My good cholesterol needed to be a little bit higher. About 2 years ago now, I went for had a little arrhythmia, and I went for the radioactive tracer dye test. I've talked about this on the show before. Set off the radiation detectors. Police came running. I was walking past the Snickers machine, and the guy said, "Can you walk slowly past this thing?" I said, "Sure." I said, "Why?" He said, "Just..." And then, wah, 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 wah. Policeman running down the hall. "Do we have an emergency?" "No, it's just this guy." He set off the radiation detectors 200 yards away, which I thought was really cool because I thought I was going to get my spider sense and I was going to be able to climb walls and all kinds of things. Was I going to turn into a giant? Was I going to shrink down to the size of a fly? I didn't know, but I knew it was going to be interesting. But you'll be pleased to know, Patty, and the rest of you, hopefully, that when I called the doctor, I called the cardiologist after they got the results back, and I said, "Yeah, hey, calling for Bill Whittle." She goes, "Hang on a second, let me talk to the doctor." She was gone for about 10, 20 seconds. She came back and said, "Dr. So-and-so said, don't bug him anymore, you're going to live forever." So I think probably good heart health. I could use a little more cardio, but I think in all things considered, for a 54-year-old guy, my health is excellent. My weight is spot on. My weight has been, prior to about the last 7-8 months, had been about anywhere from 7 to maybe 15 pounds, a little over. My target weight for my height, which is 6'1", is 168, and I'm about 170 now. So that's awful close, and that's perfect. I don't need to lose any more weight. That's just right where I want to be. You kind of have to lower that set point. For a while there, I was actually at 3, 4, 5 years ago, I was probably around 187, 188. I remember once I was at 189, I completely panicked. And then I walked it down to the low 180s, and then I walked it down to the high 170s, then I walked it down to the low 170s, and now I walked it down to about 170. I don't know how other people do this. It's just kind of a set point. I know there's some biology behind it, but for me, the psychology of it is, I look at my target weight, whatever it happens to be, and like I say, I walked it down 2 or 3 different types. But right now it's 170 or 171, somewhere in that ballpark. So the way I manage to control my weight is pretty straightforward. I get on the scale every day or every other day, and if I'm 170, 171, I'll have a cheeseburger and a milkshake. If I'm at 172, 173, I won't. And if I'm at 175, I'll back it down for a couple days. I'll have water instead of Coke, and I'll have a salad or some chicken or something instead of the cheeseburger. And so if I just stop. Once I see that thing trending, I just come back. And then when I get back down to where I want to be, I can have a milkshake again. So I know a lot of people say, some of you, I was real thin all my life, but that ended when you're in your 30s. That metabolism just stops. So I would, if I just ate what I wanted to, I'd be 270 pounds, I guess, something. But it's it's where it comes back to where you can't go wrong with what was it? It wasn't Fernando. What was it? Billy Crystal character in Saturday Night Live? "You look marvelous. I would rather look good than... It is better to look good than to feel good." I completely agree with that. Better to look good than to feel good. That's how I feel. And, I eat a lot of peaches. I eat a lot of fruit, and that's actually pretty good. Sometimes I'll go into a complete peach diet. I'll be a peachivore. And there's some good peaches out there now at Whole Foods, and so I just knock 5 or 6 or 7 of those down a day. And that actually helps me with some of this stuff. I don't get enough exercise, and that's an absolute fact. My cardio system is just dreadful, and that's something I need to work on. So I'd like to develop my cardio system by running out to my Viper jet and then landing and then running back, or running out to the fuel, or maybe I drive off the airport and then I think, man, I got a Viper jet. And I drive back and then run up to it again. That's the kind of cardio exercise I'd like to get. And I don't want to sound like I'm dissing the Sky Arrow because I love that airplane. It's just very slow, and I've flown it just about everywhere I can take it. So that's my cholesterol, Patty, and thanks for asking. Teresa Heiser wants to know, favorite iPhone app? Fernando Lamas. Yes, thank you. That's who he was based on. My favorite iPhone app. I'll tell you a quick little story about this little device here. The two apps made me buy the iPhone several years ago, probably on the i2, I think, iPhone 2. I was in a restaurant. I was in a Mexican restaurant, and somebody, we were listening. There was just some, music on, and some guy said, "Hey, check this out." And he had this app called Shazam, and he just held the phone up, and there was a lot of conversation and glasses tinking and everything like that. And all of a sudden, he shows me this thing, and it had found the music. Let's say it was Girl from Ipanema or something. It had found the music, and here's the iTunes link, and you just push the button, download it to your phone. You can play it on the way home. And here's the thing about iPhone apps. The second I saw that thing work, as Shazam, the second I saw it work, I knew exactly how it worked. The instant I saw it, I didn't have any questions. Okay, so how did this work? The thing listened to the music, took an audio sample, sent it back through the cell network. It went to the server. Server compiled the audio waveform against everything in its database, which is gigantic, but computers are fast. So it did a little signal processing to clean out the noise, took this audio waveform, compared it to its music library, mashed it with The Girl from Ipanema, went over to iTunes, found the link to iTunes, and sent that back. But I never in a million years could have thought of that. Not in a million years could I have ever thought of that app, ever. And the other one that really made me want to get the iPhone is I got to stop. Viper Check just offered me a visit, a 9G visit, and we'll have to have a conversation afterwards because I could find a way to clear my schedule for a 9G cardio workout. Anyway, and the other one I saw that was really amazing was called Around Me, which basically we came out of a screening one night at Fox Lot, and it was late. And Sunday night, it's like we ought to go someplace and get a bite and just chat. Yeah, but what's open? Doink, hits the Around Me button. Phone knows where the phone is through GPS, and it knows what the database of restaurants and banks and everything else is. So we go to restaurants, and it's like, here's 7 of them. Here are their hours. Here are their phone numbers. Here's their... Well, how do you argue with that? But those were the apps that got me to buy the phone, but they're not my favorite apps now. I have an app I like a lot called WordFeud, which is kind of an online Scrabble kind of thing. I used to do a lot of crosswords. I haven't done one since I've gotten WordFeud because now I fight crosswords against other humans. But my 2 favorite apps now are they're made by the same company. They're just terrific. And if you have any interest in space, I'd highly recommend these. One of them is called Go Sat Watch for Go Satellite Watch. Go Sat Watch. And the other one's called Go Sky Watch. Go Sat Watch shows it gives you a 3D version of the globe, and you hold it up to the sky, and as you move the phone knows where it is and tilts and shows. And Go Sat Watch basically shows you satellite passes. It'll tell you when a satellite is coming over. It'll tell you how far it is away from you now, where it is on the Earth, how bright it'll be at maximum brightness, and where it is relative to the constellations. And I've sat out in dark skies sometimes, and with this Go Sat Watch thing, and I've seen probably 15, 20 satellites in an evening. And sure enough, especially when it's really dark, you'll see one on, this is like a booster, because it tells you what's a satellite and what's a booster, a little arc. It should be right up there. It should be just below Vega, let's say. And it's 4th magnitude, 4th and a half, maybe even 5th, so you can barely just see it. Now you're looking up in the sky, and there it is, just a speck just gliding across the stars. And it's right on time. It's absolutely right on time to the second. And it's just cool. By the way, if you get Go Sat Watch, lock it up and look for the International Space Station. It comes over at an appropriate time in the evening, twilight, probably once every 2 to 3 weeks anywhere on the globe. Once every 2 to 3 weeks, the station will come over. So set up an alert for the space station, because if you haven't seen the space station come over, you're really missing something. That thing is by far the brightest object in the sky. It's brighter than Venus, or at least as bright as Venus, far brighter than Jupiter. And it's got kind of a gold tint from the solar panels. And you see this thing, you'll see it starting to come up off the horizon if it's going to go directly overhead. You'll start to see this moving light, and it's dimmer, and you look at the other end of Go Sat Watch, look at one of the other maps, and you can be standing in Los Angeles and say, well, that is over Alaska now. I can see it. It's over Alaska. Here it comes at 17,600 miles an hour. So Go Sat Watch is fantastic. And they make another one called Go Sky Watch. And Go Sky Watch is kind of a planetarium, and it's even better on the iPad. Both of these are better on the iPad, just get a little more screen area. And again, the second I saw it, I knew how it worked, but I never ever would have thought of this. Go Sky Watch, basically, your iPhone has in it, built into it, a series of accelerometers. It tells the chip what the phone is doing in space, what its orientation is, what its bank angle and its roll and its pitch angle is. It knows all these things. And then the GPS tells the iPhone where the phone actually is. And so when you hit this thing, you'll see a picture of the night sky. And as you move it, the night sky will roll and rotate. And so if you see a bright light up there with Go Sky Watch, you can take your phone, and as you move the phone knows its orientation and position, its roll and its pitch and its yaw, and you put this thing over the bright sky, and then it'll line up the crosshairs, and dink, it's Saturn, or dink, it's Jupiter, or whatever. It's fantastic. And if you want to find out where Saturn is, you can say go to Saturn and hold this thing up, and there'll be arrows giving you a vector. Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. There it is. Hey, there it is. So those are my 2 favorite apps. That's an interesting question. So thanks for that, Teresa Heiser. Go Satwatch and go Skywatch. And Word Feud. Challenge me on Word Feud and we'll have some fun. Okay. Ebersbach wants to know, what is evil? I guess everybody has a different opinion of what is evil. My opinion of evil is hurting people intentionally and deriving joy from it. And I think that's what I would do to describe evil. Hurting people directly, intentionally, and deriving pleasure from it. And I don't know. I think the people who are running this government now are evil. They can't be that stupid. I became convinced that they're evil. Benghazi proved to me that they're cowards and that they're incompetent. The things that happened during the aftermath of Benghazi showed me that they were evil, because they're allowed during the fog of war to not know what's going on. I accept that, and I don't accept the incompetence and the moral cowardice of going to bed while your consulate is under fire. There's no excuse for that. It's an impeachable offense in my opinion. But after it was over, they knew from the beginning that this was, from the first video, they knew that this was a terrorist attack. And Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton said, no, it's been ginned up by a filmmaker who still continues to rot in prison to this day, by the way. It's not our fault. This guy made a movie, exercised his First Amendment rights, and that's what caused this problem. We have to therefore limit First Amendment rights. We have to be reasonable about what we say. We have to be careful about what we say. That's evil. He knows. She knows. They both knew, and they both kept going out and lying. That's evil too, lying to the people who put you there, the people who consent to be governed. When you lie to those people through your face, you break the social compact. There's no reason to trust them anymore. There's no reason to give them authority anymore. They're lying to you. So, and they're not lying to you about national security. They're not lying to you about is there an invasion of Normandy scheduled any time for the next 2 weeks? Oh, you called me on it. Yeah, it's June 6th. That kind of a lie, you can tell in very, very limited circumstances. That kind of national security lie, I think, is allowed, is moral. It's essential. But these people just lie through their teeth to protect themselves, to protect their own skins. That's evil. And what they did to Zimmerman convinces me that they're evil. They knew that this guy wasn't a racist. He may not have known it. Obama may not have known it when he first shot his mouth off, because that's what he did. But they knew pretty quickly, when there were no charges filed or going to be filed, they knew that he was not a racist. So they made him a racist. They brought the full power of the Justice Department to prosecute a guy who nobody wanted to prosecute. The police didn't want to prosecute him. The local prosecutors didn't want to prosecute him. The Justice Department wanted him prosecuted to gin up their base for the elections. And then the Justice Department used your tax dollars to bring protesters in to up the social heat so that they had no alternative. They just kept increasing the pressure until they got their trial. And then, as we saw in the trial, they used these tactics of bullying and intimidation to intimidate the defense, to intimidate the defendant, to intimidate the jury. Is the most appalling thing I've ever seen. And still, justice and truth prevailed somehow. So that's evil. That's not incompetent. That's not stupid. That's not disagreeing. That's evil. You destroy a man's life so that you can get reelected. What else do you call it? I don't think there is anything to call it. That's evil. I don't think I need to elaborate on that. I think it's about all I want to say about that. Asaph Epstein asks, alphaness, innate, acquired? Well done on the 3 words there. Let's have a little discussion about alphaness. I was going to go with acquired, and the reason I was going to go with acquired is that I feel like I'm a fairly alpha guy. I think it takes a fair amount of alpha confidence to go out and do the work I do, and certainly to do it this stylishly. But when I look back on what I was in high school, I was, are there epsilons? Certainly long way from being an alpha guy in high school. And so I was going to go with acquired. I was going to go with, no, you can learn to be alpha. And I still think that's fundamentally, basically it. But I think in on reflection on this, I think when I was a phi or a mu or an epsilon or whatever the hell else I was certainly wasn't an alpha or a beta. I think when I think back on those days, I wanted to be, and on some level internally I thought I was. I just didn't feel it. I didn't have the confidence in it. I didn't have the evidence of it. So I think I always felt like I was or should be. I wanted to be. Let's put it that way. I certainly wanted to be. I wanted to be recognized for the work that I do, and I wanted to show people what I could do. It's kind of an alpha thing, I guess. So I suspect it's a combination of both, just like everything else, honestly. Asaph, it's probably nature and nurture. I think there's some people who have a desire to stand out and to not only achieve things, because there are many achievements that you can make. Most achievements in your life, in lives, are not public achievements. Running a successful business is a monstrously important and tough achievement. Most of those people who run successful businesses don't ever get any attention in terms of publicity. People who serve in the military, and people who are flying fighter jets and who are commanding submarines or serving on submarines, or people who are doing any of these things are achieving enormously difficult things with no publicity at all. But I think there is something about, if not publicity, then what's the word I'm looking? Visibility, maybe. That's an alpha quality. Alphas need to lead. They need to be leaders, and I've always had that sense. And I've never had a sense of having to inflict that on people. I've always wanted to lead by example. I've always felt like I was a good example, and or many years when I wasn't, decades when I wasn't, but I always wanted to be. I've told this story on this show before too. But when I was a little boy, my mom told me about a meeting that she'd had with my second grade teacher. And the second grade teacher said, Mrs. Whittle had a dream about your boy. Nowadays, that probably would put her in jail. But my mom said, oh, really? She goes, yeah. It was second grade, and the classroom was on fire. And your son, Billy, was standing on the desk in the front showing people how to get out of the room. And I don't know what second grade is, but 7 or something like that, I guess, somewhere in that ballpark. So I guess on some level there was always some element of it. And I want to connect this to a question that's coming right up behind it. Because James Lofgren wants to know leadership versus authority. And I think this is the essence of what makes makes a person either a good alpha or a bad alpha. It's the polarity. I think that's probably the word I'm looking for. It's the polarity of command. That's why James Lofgren's question is so excellent. It's so profound. I've never heard it put this way, but it's actually very deep, very deep. Leadership versus authority. What's the difference? Well, I think if you have authority, you can force people to do things. But if you are a leader, you can inspire people to do things. And there's no question about which of these is better. None. You have to really be comfortable with the idea that if you're going to be a leader, you have to lead from the front. All American military tradition has been leadership from the front. We never, maybe with the exception of World War I, but even then I think compared to the British, we were light years ahead. The British used to be 20, 30 miles behind the front, and at H hour off they go over the top, and we'll just plot little pins on boards and see where things are. But American leadership is kind of follow me. You apes want to live forever, that kind of thing. Follow me. That's leadership. Leadership, that's all you need to know about leadership, by the way. If you really want to just get the essence of leadership, follow me. It's not you go first. It's not you do the dirty work and I'll take the credit. It's follow me. And so we have to lead by example. We have to be the kind of person that other people want to follow. And I've experienced great leaders in the past. I've been around people who made me I just walk through hell for these people. And this is the kind of person you want to try to be. And the essence of leadership as opposed to authority is very small-minded. Authoritarianism is extremely small-minded and small-souled. Authoritarians are people who have so little confidence, they have so little belief in themselves, there's so much self-hatred, so much sense of maybe being wronged and society owes them, that once they get a little power, they turn into Nazis. There's a lot of parking enforcement people, and mall cops and airport cops that have this. You can tell. They're just like, they're wearing their authority to bludgeon you into respecting them. And respect doesn't work that way. Respect is earned, and respect is a free will, something you give people respect. You can't beat respect into people. You can beat compliance into them, and you can beat fear into them, and you can beat obedience into them, but you can't beat respect into somebody. Follow me is the essence of actual leadership. And so I think the difference between leadership and authority, James, is the difference between coercion and free will transactions. If the government takes your money and gives it to somebody else, that's not charity and it's not virtue. It's coercion. It's stealing. If you, on the other hand, decide to voluntarily give resources to somebody else, then that's virtue. You choose to help somebody. And that's kind of the difference, I think, in the switch for leadership and authority. All great leaders have a couple things in common. They say that grade A minds hire grade A minds, but grade B minds hire grade C minds. That's really it, isn't it? Because I think ultimately the difference between a leader and an authoritarian is confidence. Is confidence, 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 confidence. If you're confident, you don't have to take the credit for everything. If you're really confident, on the contrary, you take the credit for nothing, and you take the responsibility for everything. When things go wrong, it's my fault. When things go right, I have an incredible team. They're doing the hard work. They're just making me look good. I just stand here and let these people make me look good. When you say that, people know that you're dealing with a real, genuine leader, because a real leader, that's not false modesty. A real leader feels like he's not threatened. That's why a genuine leader will hire the best people he can. The best leaders will do nothing but hire people who are better than him or her in specific areas. They will hire the best people there are because they understand that it is the results that count. Now, people who are authoritarians are just the opposite. They don't want to be surrounded by good people. Good people make them look bad. They don't have the confidence to understand that by simply providing an example in terms of their moral authority, they can become leaders and turn that negative into a positive. They don't have the confidence to do it. They'll never have the confidence to do it. So I think that's the difference between the two. And I like to think that when I work with people who I've hired and so on, I want to set up a situation where it's not just what can you do for me, but what can I do for you? I'll pay you because you're working for me, but not just that. What else can I do for you? Can we find a way to help the stuff that you're doing for me advance your own career goals, your own life goals? Because if we can, you'll work harder and you'll do better work, and that works for you and it works for me. So it's kind of a win-win thing too. Is another aspect of leadership is follow me and spread around the credit, take all the responsibility, and you really can't go wrong like that, I think. So that's what I would say about those two things. Andy Ebersbach, wants to know my favorite Churchill quote. Been reading a lot about Churchill lately, just rereading and rereading these biographies of him in the war years and the early years. I can't boil it down to one, so I'll give you a couple. I'll end with my favorite. There's an awful lot about his wit. Mr. Churchill, if I was your wife, I'd poison your tea. Madam, if I was your husband, I would drink it. That kind of stuff is spectacular. Do that all day. I think he's probably the second most quotable person in the world after Mark Twain. If I could have dinner with three historical figures, I'd have dinner with Mark Twain, Winston Churchill, and then Mark Twain again. But Churchill's magnificent in terms of his wit. But I'm not going to really get into that because I think the substantive stuff is much more interesting. One of his quotes is this, probably the simplest of them all. I just like it so much. It's so it's right on the nose. Churchill said, "If you're going through hell, keep going." That's powerful in many ways. It's a great motivational quote, but it's also a quote that understands the dynamics of failure and stress and trial. In other words, once you get into something, it's usually easier to push through on the far side of it than it is to back up, because if you back up, you're probably going to take more damage and you haven't made any progress. You're back where you started from. Face it and push on. If you're going through hell, keep going. I think that's a profoundly good quote. I saw this quote when I was reading his biography. He was a lifelong opponent of socialism, did a lot of things that you could count as socialist for Great Britain. He had a lot of liberal in him, but he was never a fan of socialism, especially when he saw it in the Soviet Union. And Churchill said, "Socialism is a philosophy of failure. It's the creed of ignorance and the gospel of envy. Its inherent virtue is the equal sharing of misery." Going to have to look a long time before you can improve on that. Churchill said, "Success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. And as we talked about leadership a minute ago, we also know that success is the result of failure. The better you deal with failure, the more your success will be assured. I think it was mentioned this once on the show a while ago. Sylvester Stallone, I think, pitched Rocky, took the script to 100 people, said no. Almost instantly, they wanted to make the movie. Redford made him an offer pretty much the minute he read it. Said, this is a great script. It's a spectacular script. I'll star in it, and we'll get an A-list director, or maybe I'll direct it. And Stallone said, no, I'm going to star in it, and I'm going to direct it. And they said, that's never going to happen. And 99 times it didn't. And then 100 times, or 101 or something, finally somebody said yes. Success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. Sylvester Stallone stuck to his guns and made one of the great movies of all time. The first Rocky film is absolutely spectacular. It's a terrific movie. It's almost perfect. In fact, I think it is probably a perfect movie. Fantastic film. He just wouldn't give up. He just kept sticking to his guns until he became a breakout hit, and everybody knows his name, and rightfully so. Churchill also said, a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to put its pants on. And I'll tell you one thing, man, if this George Zimmerman trial's any indication of what's going on in this country or in the world, that's about as much evidence of that aphorism as you need. A lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on. That's exactly right. Especially a lie that's tailored to what people want to believe, that's tailored to their fears or their longings or their desires. That's why the Trayvon Martin story got halfway around the world before the truth about George Zimmerman had a chance to put its pants on. Churchill also said, and this is important, this is our entire theory of everything, really, for conservatives. He said, the truth is incontrovertible. Malice may attack it, ignorance may deride it, but in the end, there it is. I 100% ascribe to this idea. You don't get your, as I said on the Afterburner, Daniel Patrick Moynihan said, you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts. The truth is real, the truth exists, and we don't have different versions of the truth. What happened, happened. You can cover that up. Victors can write the history, but what happened, happened. And what is. And it's a profound understanding. And so is the close of that. In the end, there it is. Whether you win the argument or not, there it is. And then the final two. This is his radio address after France had fallen, when it looked like the Germans were going to be coming any time, and England had evacuated its troops from Dunkirk. A little miracle there, but they had no weapons. They left every single weapon they had on the beaches. These people were swimming out to boats, left all their tanks and their supplies and their trucks and their rifles and anti-aircrafts and everything on the beaches in France. And Germany was poised to invade, and his people were scared, and they were stunned because they thought, France had a bigger army than the Germans. They had more tanks, they had more airplanes than the Germans. And France had fought for 4 years in World War I and held the line and not collapsed. So when they surrendered in 6 weeks, it was the end of the world. And Churchill got on the radio and he said, we shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and on the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. Okay. What else do you say? Churchill's credibility was built up over 20 years of warning people about Hitler, and nobody listened to him. He was a warmonger. He was a hate-filled warmonger, a hate-filled conservative Tory warmonger who just wanted people to die for money. And after Hitler's character became clear, which had been clear the whole time, by the way, all you had to do was read Mein Kampf, which Churchill did. Churchill knew what he was. And after all the self-deception that I mentioned a minute ago about wanting to believe that lie, after all that sophistry and delusion evaporated after Czechoslovakia, although should have been seen much, 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 much sooner, people realized that Churchill had been telling us this the whole time. He was a fighter, and he was right. So that's my second favorite quote. My favorite quote, same line, same attitude, defiance really, but I think this is it. He said, never give in, never give in, never, never, never. In nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in, except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never yield to force, never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy. I took this question because this is something we all need to remember these days as we watch Obama dismantle everything we hold dear, and not just Obama, Obama's a symptom of what's gone wrong with this country. He's not so much the causes, he's the symptom. So when you think it's intractable, when you think there's no way to recover it, when you think the country's gone, when you think we're doomed, all that other stuff, get it out of your system. Get up the next day. Go out and fight these people. Never give in. Never give in. Never, never, never. In nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never yield to force. Never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy. And I don't like to describe other Americans as the enemy, but in this case, I don't know what else to call them. They're the enemies of freedom. They're the enemies of truth. They're the enemies of liberty. They're the enemies of individualism. They're the enemies of everything that we believe in. And he's the president. Keith Dorset wants to know, what's the frequency? Kenneth, might have gotten that one in last week. What's the frequency? Kenneth, the frequency is 121.5. That's the frequency. Frequency is 121.5. Pilots out there immediately know what that means. Some of you may not. So on aviation frequencies, which are for civilian use here in the United States, it's called guard. And if you are on a radio anywhere in this country at any time of the day or night and you make a broadcast on 121.5, somebody will hear you. There's somebody monitoring 121.5 all the time, everywhere. That's profoundly reassuring to me. Sitting here in the office, it's profoundly reassuring to me. In the air, it's even more reassuring. 1215 is the frequency, Keith. 1215, guard. Remember those numbers. If you ever have a radio, if you ever get in an airplane, if you find yourself at you've got a pilot who had a heart attack or whatever, 121.5, 1 to 1 and a half, 1 to 1.5 is guard. And I think I'm so glad I got that question, because the guard frequency is one of those things that nobody knows about, but it's one of the coolest things about this country. There's somebody listening when you pick up that 911 call on a radio, anywhere, all the time. So if you're in trouble, 1 to 15, and give them your position and state the number of souls on board. And as we say in aviation, especially at nighttime, if you have to make an emergency landing at nighttime, what you want to do is you want to set up for best glide. You want to turn on your landing light. You want to look for a suitable place to land. And if you see nothing but boulders and debris, then you turn off the landing light. So the frequency is 1 to 15, Keith. Ross K. Wolf wants to know, familiar with Slender Man? Familiar with Slender Man? Ross, I don't know what I would ever do being familiar with Slender Man. Who is Slender Man, and why are we having this conversation? I don't see any real point in this. No, I'm not familiar with Slender Man. I have no idea who Slender Man is or what it is. It's probably some kind of pop reference that I don't get. But no, I'm sorry. I have no idea what you're talking about. And we'll see you in your nightmares. Google him. Slender Man. Moving on. Sometimes we see this, it's like these movies that come out, then it's like White House Down and Olympus Has Fallen. We get the same question often 2 or 3 times in a show. And in the same show, it's a little weird because we don't usually get this question. We got the same thing from James Lofgren, who asks, favorite military aircraft? And we get something completely different from Christopher Jepson, who asks, favorite military plane? I have 2. And I have a favorite, and I'll just go ahead with it. I think this is the most beautiful airplane ever made. I think it is simply the most beautiful airplane ever made. That's an F-16 Fighting Falcon, and it's been in service for quite a while now, late 70s. But my God, the lines on that airplane are just staggering. And when you see one in the flesh, it's even prettier. Look at the way that leading edge strake is just blended into the nose. Look at that bubble canopy, that There's no front bow on the front of that canopy. It's one piece of plexiglass. Look how high the pilot is relative to the plexiglass. He has a fantastic field of view, almost as good as in my Sky Arrow. He's got a stick on the right that's not actually connected to flight controls. The F-16 was the first fly-by-wire jet. They called it the electric jet, and they had some problems with the flight control software in the beginning. So first of all, they called it the lawn dart because it looks like a lawn dart, and a few of them ended up that way. But it is simply the most beautiful airplane ever made. It's a superb, superb weapon system. Originally designed as a result of the work of John Boyd, who also designed the F-15, and along the same lines. Boyd thought that they kind of glommed up the F-16, but if that's glommed up, then I don't. Boyd just wanted a pure low-cost rapier. He wanted a very light, very fast airplane that could change its energy state very, very quickly. The F-16 is without question the most beautiful airplane ever made, in my opinion. And by the way, I didn't bring a picture of this, but if you think about it, the F-16 has some very similar qualities to the P-51 Mustang, which I think is the most beautiful propeller fighter ever made. They both have that bubble canopy, and they both have that belly scoop. They've got that scoop down low, and it's just something about that, just a muscular-looking thing. Now, with that said, I do have a second place, which is not as good-looking, but has a certain kind of hold over me because it was the first fighter I ever saw in the sky, and it was. I have a lot of emotional fondness for this guy. That is an F-100 Super Sabre. I'm thinking it's a C model. It might be a D. The F-100 Super Sabre was the first of the Century Series aircraft, so that's why it was the F-100. The 100s were the Century Series, the F-100 Super Sabre, F-101 Voodoo, F-102 Delta Dart, I think. I always get those two mixed up. There was no F-103 that flew. The F-104 was a Starfighter. F-105 was the Thunder Chief. F-106 was the Delta Dagger. No real F-107, F-108, and the F-109 was the... I don't know. Anyway, the F-100 was the first of the Century Series, and it was called the Century Series because the F-100 was the first airplane that would go supersonic in level flight. In afterburners, the Hun, as it was called, could go supersonic in level flight. And I first saw that airplane as painted when I was 5 years old in Kinley Air Force Base in Bermuda when the Thunderbirds performed in the F-100s. I lost my mind. Now, the F-100 to me, I'll go back to the F-16 real quickly. The F-16 has very, very elegant curved lines, very graceful, very feminine in a way, although it's very tough looking. It's very blended, very smooth, and the F-16 kind of looks like a Jag or something, Jaguar. The F-100, on the other hand, looks like a muscle car. It looks like a Camaro or a Charger. It's got these big, thick American lines. A very tiny canopy compared to the F-16, much smaller. The pilot sits a lot lower. And it looks like sheet muscle. There's nothing elegant about it. It just looks bulked up. It's just a big, tough, honking piece of aluminum. And I think the F-100 is a fantastic airplane. I like that long pitot tube too. I think that's really, really cool. I don't think that's the refueling drogue. I'm almost positive it's not. No, the refueling drogue is different. But the F-100 is a beautiful airplane, and in Thunderbird colors, it just has a magical effect on me for a number of reasons. And if you ever saw them in the F-100s, I don't think the Thunderbirds were ever better. I think the Thunderbirds in the F-16 are very elegant, very beautiful, much higher performance. But there's something about those F-100s with those really cool delta wings. They just had this really raked delta wing, and from the bottom, with the Thunderbird painted on the bottom, there's something about that airplane that just knocks me off my perch every time. I love the F-100. But the F-16 is... By the way, the F-16, when you look at one up close, especially without the paint on it, it looks like it's made by, Vulcans or somebody. Yeah, it's just perfectly smooth. There's no rivet that's visible. I mean, it's just blended and contoured, and everything's just a nice kind of a spline, and good Lord, what an airplane that is. So... those are my two favorites. Moving on. This is a profound question. We got three more after this. This is probably the question of the night, though, in terms of depth, I think. Joshua Tiemans wants to know, why is America? Isn't that interesting? Now, what is America? Which is an interesting question. Where is America? Relatively straightforward to ask. Why is America? Why? Of all the things that I despise about progressives and socialists in America, about American progressives and socialisms, I don't begrudge them anything. If they're from other countries, they're entitled to their philosophy of slavery and ruin. I don't care. But when I hear Americans talking about bringing in socialism and tolerating socialism and being a part of this whole thing, it makes me crazy, because they don't understand that why is America? America is an idea. It's the only country in the world that's founded on an idea. It's founded on the idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The French Republic was founded on the idea of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Liberty and equality are opposing each other. Total liberty means zero equality. Total equality means zero liberty. If you think that through, it's really true. So no wonder the French Revolution was doomed. These two things are in direct opposition to each other, and fraternity is not something that's built into the human condition. They tried to build it in, and hundreds of thousands of people were guillotined trying to make that happen. Didn't happen. But life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are not mutually exclusive. On the contrary, they're mutually reinforcing. And so America, the why is America? America is here because the most transcendental elements of the human spirit need a place to live. That's a rather decent quote, I think. America is here because the most transcendental elements of the human spirit need a place to live. There needs to be a place where you can do what you want to do and start a business and invent the home computer or the airplane without filling out thousands of forms and begging permission and without all these nutty regulations and taxes and government interference and licenses and tests and all these lock the doors behind you kind of things that we're seeing today. Freedom needs a place to live on earth, the ability to be free, and not just to be free, although there's nothing wrong with being free to just go where you want to, do what you want to with your life. It's totally cool. But I think that's actually a side effect to it. The idea of being free to create things that didn't exist before. That's what America. That's why there's America. You need a place on the earth where dreamers can dream things and can bring these dreams to reality. And it doesn't matter how many times you fail. How many times did Sylvester Stallone fail before he gave us that work of art? How many times did the Apple guys fail? How many times did they take it to IBM and whoever? No, we're not interested. Okay. And thinking of this device here, how many times did we think, well, Apple went to a couple of different places, and then Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started Apple Computer, and it was a big success. Well, they started Apple Computer, it was a big success, and then Steve Jobs got thrown out of his own company, and he was wandering the wilderness for 20 years, and finally he comes back and has this renaissance of the iPhone and the iPad and the iMac and all this other stuff. Where else does this happen in the world? Nowhere. That's why there's America. Invention has to be brought to earth and transcendental dreams of success and transcendental dreams of a vision, and it doesn't have to be something as world-changing as the iPhone. You can have a vision of an automobile repair shop. You can have a vision of a dry cleaning store. You have a vision of financial independence. I'm going to open a dry cleaning store, and all of the members of the family are going to work in it, and we'll be there till 11 o'clock at night, and we'll be there on weekends. But if we can get this thing going, we'll never have to worry about income again. We'll be independently financially secure. And if we work really hard and are really good at it, we may actually be wealthy. There's nowhere else in the world people think this way. Well, some of them think this way, but they can't do anything, so they come to America. This is the land of dreams and opportunities. It's the physical home of dreams on earth. That's why there's an America. And America, look, of all the places in the world, and I've been to a few, I wouldn't call myself super widely traveled, but, I've been to Europe, I've been to Southeast Asia, I've been to Australia, I've been around, I haven't been to South America, I've been to Central America a little bit, and certainly know what these places look like. There's no place on the earth that is as beautiful as North America, in my opinion. North America, the flora and the fauna and the geography of North America, I think it's the most beautiful place in the world. New Zealand is a very, very close runner. But with that said, America is not geography, and America is not it's not our continental boundaries, it's not Yosemite, it's not Texas, it's not the amber waves of grain. America is not those things. And America is not even really the Constitution or the government. America is an idea. It's an idea of being free and being prosperous and being safe and handing it down to your children and letting other people do these things as well. It's a civil place. It's a decent place. It's a place where there's the rule of law and good manners are rewarded. They're not just tolerated, they're rewarded. And no one makes you be polite. You're polite because it's good for you. It's not just good for business, it's good for your soul. It's an upward spiral. It's a self-reinforcing, positive reinforcing reactor where all sorts of different opinions, different ethnicities, different races, different religions come into contact, squeeze together, and it's a reactor that generates energy, spiritual energy, which is translated into things like guarantees of freedom, which have never existed before, protections against individual liberty. It's a guarantee of the military might, which is the result of harnessing that reactor. Our military is so powerful because of this society. We're not a great society because of the military. We have a great military because we're a great society. We produce all sorts of things. We're very inventive, hardworking people, very energetic people, and I think it's all those things. Where else is this going to live? Where else are you going to put this stuff? You got to put it somewhere. Actually, you don't. You don't have to put it somewhere because it didn't exist. It didn't exist forever. And if we're not careful, it's not going to exist in the future. But I'll tell you one thing, folks. America will survive Barack Obama. America will survive Eric Holder, Nancy Pelosi, and Harry Reid. It will survive all those things. It's a much bigger idea than these weenies. And America is a thought. America is an idea. You can take America. You don't even need to take the flag. And I know we're starting to get into territory that's a little where we start to blend so many of these deeply held passions and beliefs. But you don't even need the flag, although I love the flag. And if this country ever fell as a country, if it ever fell into tyranny, I would take the flag because they don't own the flag. They've commandeered the flag. They've stolen the flag. I'd take the flag with me, but you don't even need the flag. It's an idea. It's an idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's radical. That is a revolutionary idea. The idea that you have a right to be happy. You have an obligation to be happy. You have a moral obligation to be happy. And that's why liberals are so miserable. And I don't care if they're miserable. This is the thing I can't stand about these progressives. When you start talking about like dividing up the country, forget even about the civil, like a cold Civil War thing. The idea that, look, okay, you want to live that way? That's fine. You want a blue state model in California? Fine. We'll have a red state model in Texas or Idaho or wherever, and we'll let them compete. They can't handle that. The idea that somebody is out there free, succeeding, or being free and not being regulated is anathema to them. They have to control everyone and all of it. They won't leave you alone. If you think the idea that these people will leave you alone to go your own way, you're out of your mind. Their philosophy is predicated on control. And if you're left alone, not are you not only a bad example. Texas is a very bad example for Barack Obama and for California. Dallas makes Chicago look bad. Texas makes California look bad and makes Michigan and Detroit look even worse. Because in an era of universal debts, not just in America, but all around the world, Texas is running an $8 billion surplus. Why? Because Texas is America. Because Texas is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Get out of the way. Don't bug us. No personal income tax for the state and a legislature that meets, 2 weeks every other year or something like that? How do you argue with that? But the idea that you could leave California, go to Texas, and let people live as conservatives in Texas is anathema to these people. They have to control all of it. They have to bring it down. They have to bring it down. And that's why you have to be prepared to fight these people. You fight them rhetorically until it's not a rhetorical fight anymore. Let's just pray that it doesn't get to that point. But that's why we have a Second Amendment, because I don't think these people are going to rest until they control everything. That's a great question, Joshua. That's one of the best questions I've ever had. I just like the way it's phrased. Why is America? It's really beautiful. It's really elegant. So thank you very much for that. I thank all of you for these questions. We've got 3 left. This one we can dispatch fairly quickly. David Reel wants to know, maybe it's Reale, R-E-A-L-E, David Reel I'm going to go with, wants to know Nicholson or Ledger. I don't think it's a big stretch to realize he's talking about which Joker performance that I prefer. And honestly, of all the questions I've ever been asked on this show, I think this is the easiest one to answer. There's just, in my mind, there is simply no comparison between these two performances. None. You can't even speak of them in the same breath. Jack Nicholson was doing an over-the-top, campy, not an impersonation, a caricature. He was doing a cartoon. He was behaving like, he was acting. Heath Ledger made the Joker terrifying because of the the smallness and the economy of the performance. Nicholson is strutting around with these big faces and all this other stuff, and Ledger's sitting in a corner. He's just sitting quietly in the corner, just looking at people. It's so compelling. I think the Heath Ledger's performance in Dark Knight is the second best performance I've ever seen, second only to Joaquin Phoenix's performance in The Master. It's not a great movie, but Philip Seymour Hoffman is so magnificently good in that movie. He's just so great. It's such a great performance. You utterly ignore it because Phoenix is doing something. Joaquin Phoenix is doing something in The Master I've never seen before. It's not. I can't call that acting in the way that I understand acting. That performance is unbelievable, and Heath Ledger is damn near that good. When after the movie came out, there's a lot of YouTube videos that are just the Joker scenes, and I realized that's all I want to see. I have no interest to find anything other than Heath Ledger. I'll watch Batman when he's with Heath Ledger. Every single frame he's in that movie is magnificent. And the definition, in my opinion, of magnificent is interesting. It's interesting. Everything he does is interesting. Every choice he makes as an actor is interesting. It's interesting. It's different. It's not your first choice or your second choice or your third choice. It's inventive. It's brilliant, and it's absolutely magnificent. I think Heath Ledger in the Joker, as the Joker rather in Dark Knight, is simply one of the three great iconic performances in the history of the cinema. Don't even ask me what the other two are because I can't think of any other two. It was that good. And then to find out he died, I was not a huge Heath Ledger fan when I heard he died. It was before I saw the movie, and after I saw the movie and saw the magnificence of that performance, I really missed him. But I didn't feel his loss when he died. But after I saw the movie, I certainly felt like what have we been deprived of in the future? Where would this guy have gone in the future as a young man? So many actors develop over the course of their lives and develop wisdom, and gotten to be friends with Jon Voight, and I look at Jon Voight's early performances, and you can see the genius in everything he did. I think Jon Voight blows Dustin Hoffman out of the water in Midnight Cowboy. I think his performance is not a performance. I think Jon Voight is, what's his name? Buck. Joe Buck. He is Joe Buck, and Dustin Hoffman is playing Ratso Rizzo. But you look at Jon Voight when he's a young man, you can see the genius. You can see it. It's just there. It's there in Midnight Cowboy, and it's there in Deliverance, and in all these places. But as Jon Voight got to practice his profession over the course of 40 or 50 years, I think he just got better and better and better. He just got better and better and better. And I don't know if he's ever had scripts that were the match of that. He had a couple. But Heath Ledger died so early. It makes you wonder what that guy could have accomplished in another 10 or 15 years if he had that strong of a start. So it was a terrible tragedy. And the only person I think I miss and regret and filled with a sense of tragedy of this kind of overdose life is a comedian that many of you may not have heard, but a comedian named Mitch Hedberg. Mitch Hedberg's one of the funniest guys who ever lived. He's one of the most appealing comedians I've ever heard. My favorite comedian is, by a wide margin, is, for the love of God. It just flew out of my head. I've got his face right in front of me. It'll come to me in a second. Mitch Hedberg, Brian Regan. But Mitch Hedberg is so hypnotic and charming that when I found out, I hadn't seen him until about 2-3 years ago. Discovered him about 2 years ago, I guess 2-3 years ago, and I saw everything he had on the web, and I said, I got to see more of this. Well, you can't see more of this because he died of a drug overdose, I think in 2008. I'm not sure about that. Thanks, Mitch. Damn it, Mitch. Mitch. Mitch, come on, really? Terrible. He was so sweet. If you look up his Comedy Central special, 3-part performance, three 7-8 minute installments for a half-hour comedy special. It's as good as it gets. I saw somebody else mention Jon Voight in Runaway Train. That's probably his best performance ever. It's certainly his best performance, in his opinion. I've had a long conversation with John about Runaway Train, and he never felt it got the exposure it needed. He actually didn't want to do that movie, and he got a sign. to do it. You got like a sign from God kind of a thing, or from the universe or nature. I'm not saying he said it was from God, but he said he got a sign to do Runaway Train, and he thought it was the best work he's ever done. And I haven't seen it, but I bet it's terrific. Anyway, somebody mentioned it in the comment section. So it's Ledger all the way. I'm not a big fan of Nicholson. I don't like the broadness of it. I think it's kind of, the thing about Nicholson is a movie star, and Heath Ledger's an actor. And that's why I don't particularly like Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is a movie star. Now, not all of them are movie stars. Brad Pitt, I think, is an actor and a movie star. George Clooney is a movie star and he's an actor. But I don't think Tom Cruise is an actor. I think he's a movie star. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, it's Ledger all the way. Austin Cotner wants to know, best trip ever. I think I have to go right off. I had a immediately flash to an answer, and so that's the answer. When I was 16, I guess, 17, 16, I was working at the Miami Planetarium, and we were up on the Southern Cross Observatory, which is located up on the roof of the Museum of Science in South Miami, Florida, not far from Coconut Grove. South Miami, even back then, it'd be about 1974, 75, somewhere in there. 76, so I was 16. In 75, I was 16. And so we'd be up on the roof of the observatory every night. We had some big telescopes up there, but all you could really see was the planets and the moon because there was so much light pollution from Miami. They just put in the sodium vapor lights and kind of orange glow coming up. It really just can't see anything. And we're all dark sky guys, and we used to go out to the Everglades every now and then for star parties. So one night we were up in the Southern Cross Observatory, and I was up there with two other guys, and we were talking about Kitt Peak Observatory in Arizona, which had just been opened in Flagstaff. I think it's Flagstaff. And brand new telescope, second or third biggest telescope in the world, and how cool it was, and brand new kind of a design, and really neat, And we're looking at this observatory, we're just complete astronomy geeks, and we thought, man, it'd be really awesome to see that telescope. And we just kind of looked around at each other one night. It was about 9 o'clock or something at night, and we looked around at each other and we said, why don't we just go? And I think I got a friend to cover my planetarium schedule, and 3 days later we got in a car. It wasn't my car, but we got in a car, and I was 16 or 17. The other two guys were probably 18 or 19, right in that ballpark. We just got in the car and went, and we didn't stop. We didn't do hotel rooms. We slept in the car. One of us would sleep, and one would drive, and hopefully the second one would be awake to keep the guy who's driving awake. But I remember it's the first time I ever drove cross country. It's the first time I was ever out west, and it was just magical. There's nothing like a road trip when you're a young man. I don't think it's the same for young women. Might be. I don't hear stories about it. But when you get guys together and you first have your driver's license and you have the sense of, it's the time when you're breaking out from the home. And when you're on the open road and you're like, 15 hours or 20 hours or 40 hours away from home, and there's nobody there to take care of you and there's no one there to hold your hand. It's just you and a couple friends and the road. And that's also what America is that kind of freedom and the ability to just kind of rack out the back seat of might have been a 74 Maverick or something, the most uncomfortable car ever made, the most uncomfortable seats ever constructed in the Ford Maverick. We drove out across country. This is where we learned the majesty, the awesome, terrifying majesty that is Texas. Because if you drive from Florida west, on I-10, the mile markers count down. If you're coming west to east, they count up, but going east to west, they count down. So I remember we drive out of Florida. We're watching Florida's 600-700 miles from Miami through the Panhandle. It's a long way. You'd be amazed at how long it is. The Panhandle really is just shockingly big. It's almost as big as the drive up. So we're watching these miles counting down. We're counting, all right, and then we're out of Florida. We're into Alabama, I guess. And then there's only 120 miles. Then you get into Louisiana, and parts of Louisiana, or maybe it's Mississippi. I can't remember. It's 60 miles or something. So you're knocking these states down. You're feeling pretty good about it. We're on our way west, man, and we're getting there. We're making time. And then you come to the Texas border on I-10, and it's like 880 miles. Mile marker 880. And that's back during the days of the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. And it's like 880 miles. 880 miles? If we were doing 80 miles an hour, that's 11 hours. We're not doing 80 miles an hour. We're doing 65. We're going to be in Texas for 15, 16 hours. Yep. And then it was my first time ever out west. And in Texas, I didn't consider Texas to be the West. No offense, Texas. Because once you get west of Houston, it just turns into badlands and scrub. But once I got into New Mexico and especially into Arizona, I felt like, man, this is not the same country I left in South Florida. It's like dry and all these mesas and the geography. There's geography. Things went up and down. Florida's flat as an ironing board. And so we got out to Kitt Peak Observatory, did the little astronomy tour in the afternoon, found like a group of local astronomers, did a star party thing, pushed on through to California, and I don't think I saw any of California. I think I got on a jet the next morning, flew back to Miami. But that was the best trip I think I've ever had. I remember the music from that time. I remember Rubber Band Man by, who was that? Was that Earth, Wind, and Fire? And just a couple of other tunes. And it's, it's kind of this sort of, it's a kind of movie that, a kind of a story that John Hughes should have made a movie about, that kind of thing. And I think most kids have gone through that. I remember writing in Silent America that that minimum wage is, I did the math. Minimum wage in America was 80 miles or something an hour, or 200 miles an hour. That's how much, $2 a gas or whatever. I did the calculations. But you could actually measure your income in the number of miles you could travel in your car. And, I think that's going away. I think not just because of all the environmentalism and all this other stuff, but because most kids today don't get out of the house. They don't need to. They're on their mobile devices and they're chatting with their friends. No one rides bikes anymore. No one goes and hangs out with their friends. Nobody walks through neighborhoods at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. Nobody seems to do road trips. Everybody's connected, but nobody's together. I don't know. I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for kids who don't play Little League Baseball or ride their bikes with their friends or stay out all night talking about girls or get in their car and drive cross country. I pity them. I really do. So that, Austin Kuttner, was the best trip ever. And then Sally Morris wants to know, what's your future? And I'm sorry to be a tease about this, but I did take the question so that I could be a bit of a tease about this. There are going to be some fundamental, major changes around here, starting around the 25th through the 28th of August. I don't have an exact date yet, but when I do, we'll start to do promotions and teases about this. Everything that I do, I'm going to keep doing what I do. I don't want to scare anybody. It's a very flattering thing to have that thought fly in your head. But we are going to enormously consolidate and expand and improve the reach and the number of things that we do. So there's going to be a complete sort of a rebranding of everything, and it's gonna be really, really, really fun and really, really cool. It's gonna provide the scaffolding to allow us to do things like the Free Frontier. It's gonna provide the scaffolding to allow us to make some of these movies. There's a movie that's going to come before Aurora, and I'll tell you about that maybe next time. I may dedicate a whole Stratosphere Lounge, if not to that next movie, then to this whole thing. But it's really going to be exciting, and we've looked at the math, we've looked at promotions, looked at a bunch of other things, and I think it's time for us to really start firing on all cylinders here. I think I'm a little underexposed, and we're going to try and put an end to that, and we're making some fundamental changes, and you'll all be a big part of that because the Facebook page is kind of the core constituency, and the Stratosphere Lounge fans are the core constituency of the core constituency. You're the central committee. You're the inner sanctum of the inner sanctum. Dachas for all of you on the Volga. So it's going to be really, really exciting, and I think everybody's going to be very, very happy about it. And we're going to also be looking for a lot of input on some of the things we're going to do. We're going to have a lot of product. And have a lot of product that we don't have now. Lots and lots and lots of things available. And not just for me. One of the things that's most exciting about what's coming is I get a chance to actually, for the first time in my life, to produce other people and other things, and to be able to help other people get some exposure and achieve their dreams. People help me that way, and And there's some absolute real talent out there, and we'll get a chance to expose you to some of those. And I know a lot of people want to help, and we're going to give you a chance. We're going to give you a chance to help, because I think if we can get this thing sorted out, and as we start to get the pitch and the explanation of what we want to do clear, I think I can make the case that we can actually do something important and really change things. I really do. So that's all coming. That's in the future, and the future is bright. Really, really, really bright for the Strata Loungers especially. I think you're going to really get to see a lot more stuff, a lot more interesting stuff, different stuff, bring back some old friends, perhaps, whose initials may be AK and other things. And so we're real excited, and I don't want to oversell it, and I don't want to over-tease it, but in the next 30 days, we're going to start a countdown clock, and then we'll start to give you an idea of some of the changes that are going on here. So we're real excited about that. And I think that will do it for the Stratosphere Lounge episode. I want to say 34 or 5. I'll look it up, and I'll put a link up in the next day or two. Always close the show the same way. Enormous thanks to all of you for your support, especially for your support in pushing this latest Afterburner out. It's gotten out of the gate faster than anything I've ever done. As I record this, it's at about 750,000 views in about 4 or 5 days. It's on track to do the best business I've ever done. It may or may not be 2.5 days, but it's going to be, at this speed, it's going to be at least my second biggest video. So thank you so much for all your help in pushing that out. And as I said, some big changes here coming up so that we can continue to do more of that work and get it out further, get it out, push it more, get seen by more people, get everything consolidated. That's really what these changes are about, consolidation and branding. So real excited about that, and hopefully you will be too. But as always, I owe it all to you guys. Everything that's good in my life is a direct result of your support from the beginning. So thank you, Guatemalan water snake, who just told me it was 34, episode 34. I got a quick message up there I saw from my friend who's going to Oshkosh in Bearcoot 13. James, I'm not going to be able to make it, but go out there and win every trophy there is, will you? Take that beautiful bird of yours. As I said before, James Redmond and Bearcoot 13 is America. It's America. He wanted an airplane, so he built one. And it took him darn near 20 years. And it's just about the best airplane in the sky. It's a work of art. And it just gets better every time he makes an adjustment to it. And it's his own money, and it's his own labor, and it's his own pursuit of happiness. And James, I'm very, 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 very envious. I'd race you in the Sky Arrow, but you'd be able to get there and back before I cleared the Class Delta airspace. So good luck, and go get every trophy there is, buddy. All right, guys, that's episode 34. Thank you, Guatemalan Water Snake of the Stratosphere Lounge with your host, Bill Whittle. I think we'll see you next week for the famous two-word questions. Then we'll do haikus, then one-word questions, and then we'll do some more theme shows. But anyway, thanks for joining us tonight. I hope you had a good time, and we'll see you soon. Take care now.